Welcome to the very first episode of This is the Way, a Star Wars podcast. My name's Adam Lavelle. I'm 50 years old and I have been a fan of Star Wars since 1977 when that baby first came out. My mother bought me the comic books, to tell you the truth, before I actually got to see any of the movies. So I didn't go to the movies as soon as they came out. I was 7. But she brought home the comic book versions of A New Hope. And I loved them. I was a comic book fan all my life. As is typical among a lot of Star Wars fans, we also enjoy comic books. I haven't collected comic books in some time, but I do read the Star Wars comic books, at least as much as I possibly can. But anyhow, she brought home the Star Wars New Hope comic books, and I was addicted. I wanted the figures, I wanted the ships, I wanted all the toys, and as much as my humble parents, could oblige me, I got much of it. As much as they possibly could. And I went to see the movies. I believe I probably didn't see Star Wars for another year or so, or however long it was remained in the theaters. Look, first thing you're going to learn about me is, as much as I love Star Wars, is I am not a statistical fanatic. I do not remember dates and times. I wasn't a great student in history. I just don't remember things like that. I can remember details and lines and things like that from the movies that I love, but I am not good at saying on May 25th of 1977 or something like that. I know the first 3 trilogies came out, all of them came out in May, like 77, 80 something, and 2 years after that. See, I am not a statistical guy. I'm not going to remember that stuff. And honestly, for what I hope to accomplish with this show, it's not important. I appreciate you guys who do have a mind for that and are capable of doing things like that, but you're going to learn pretty quickly that that isn't me. Okay? So I'm doing this podcast, this show, this YouTube podcast, or maybe it's a vlog, whatever you want to call it, for 2 reasons. Okay? There are 2 reasons I decided to do this. Number 1, to try to win back some of the Star Wars fans who have abandoned the saga because they weren't happy with how the new sequels or the prequels or what have you went. They think they have better fan fiction ideas, and that the new directors, producers, Disney as a whole, whatever, have screwed Star Wars up. They've messed it up. Many believe they've ruined it. I'm out to win some of you guys back. Some of you guys, some of you ladies, some of you children back to the Star Wars series, because number 1, I was almost one of you. There were times, especially the prequels, that I thought, this isn't Star Wars. I'm done. Jar Jar Binks. No, thank you. This is not good. I've since reformed. I've since seen the errors of my ways, and that's what this podcast is going to cover. What caused me to turn around? What redeemed me in the Star Wars world, if you will, in hopes that it can save the rest of you, or at least some of you out there. Much like Han Solo touching the face of Ben, calling him home to the light side of the Force, I hope that I, Adam Palpatine, as I'm going to go by in the Star Wars world, because, I've revealed my last name in a lot of places online, and it's led to some creepy situations. So, in the Star Wars world, my name is Adam, and I'm going to steal the name Palpatine, just like Rey took the name Skywalker. I'm going to take Palpatine, and my hope is to redeem that name myself within the Star Wars community, that when you hear the name Palpatine, especially Adam Palpatine, you will recognize it as something good in the world of Star Wars. Rey wasn't brave enough to do it, and I'm a fan of Rey, before somebody gets mad. She had to take the Skywalker name, and we're going to go into that. But I'm going to take the name Palpatine and see what I can do with it. Okay? I said there were 2 reasons. The second reason I'm doing this podcast show on YouTube is that I really hope to win new fans to the world of Star Wars. Again, I started in the Star Wars world when I was 7 years old. I am now 50. Okay, so for 43 years, Star Wars has officially been out for 42. So for 42 years, I have followed this beloved franchise, and it has brightened my life in a lot of ways. I don't want to put it in some kind of religious spectrum or something. That's ridiculous. But in the entertainment world, it has brightened my life, and I'm very appreciative of it. And we're going to go into why, and I'm going to tell you why I think if you've never watched Star Wars, Unless you're one of these people who are proud of that. I don't watch Star Wars. I don't watch Harry Potter. I don't watch Lord of the Rings. Aren't I cool? Aren't I awesome? Aren't I mature and sophisticated because I do not watch these things? I don't think there's winning those kind of people over. You just can't do it. But if you've just never watched it because, I don't know if it's for me, maybe, well, I'm going to convince you, or my hope is that I'm going to convince you to start watching the Star Wars saga unfold before your eyes. We're going to do that together on these shows as well. That's another thing we'll get to later. But tonight, I'm starting the show a little early. I wasn't going to start this show until January of 2020, in a few weeks here, because I wanted to get my office set up. I know it's not a big deal, but ultimately, that makes no real difference in how successful a show is. But I really want to get my office set up. I want to get a professional microphone. I want to get, you can see my lightsaber over my shoulder here. I want to get more Star Wars decor behind me. I have some of it. It's stored away in my garage downstairs. I wanted to take the time to get it. But I wanted to do the show tonight early. I wanted to kick off the show early for one reason. One reason only. I'm going to mention somebody's name here. And then I hope to really never mention him again. Unless maybe we develop some type of back and forth. I don't know. But there is a very popular pop culture review person, a person on YouTube who talks about pop culture, a lot of Star Wars stuff, who is just yanking Star Wars down. He's cutting it apart with his red lightsaber with all of his might. Victor Van Doomcock is his name. Now, the reason I want to keep saying his name is because I just don't want to put his show over. I don't want people to flock, especially those of you who might be watching me who are already disgusted and frustrated with Star Wars because they're not meeting your high levels of storytelling. I have 2 dogs and it sounds like they're going to bark. That's going to be frustrating, but bear with me if that happens. But Victor Van Doomcock is out there just firing his laser rifle, his bowcaster, knocking holes all over Star Wars, especially the latest installment of the Star Wars saga, the conclusion, Rise of Skywalker. I mean, this guy is decimating it. He's doing a good job in regard to being part of the cancel culture and trying to tear something apart that many people love. He claims to be doing this out of a labor of love. He's compared it to, now this is his comparison, not me, folks. He has compared his views on Star Wars and those who refuse to follow in his path of rejecting Star Wars, especially Rise of Skywalker, as abused women who stay with their abusers. That's what he's comparing it to. He is characterizing the Rise of Skywalker and these new sequel trilogies as being so bad, so terrible, that they are the equivalent of, or at least worthy of comparing to, an abusive husband beating his wife. And the wife staying with him because ultimately he's a nice guy, he's a good guy, he loves her, so she's going to stick around and give him a chance. That's the comparison he's making. Over the top to me, but that's how you sell these days. I mean, that guy gets clicks more than I'll probably ever get. One of his shows will probably get more clicks than all of my shows combined will get, but I'm okay with that because I'm out here to reach a certain audience. I'm not looking to make this my career. Would that be kind of nice? Sure. But I've got what I consider a dream job where I make good money and I'm very content at. So I'm not looking to come on here and say a lot of controversial things to get a lot of clicks. I'm just not about that, okay? I'm about the love of Star Wars and trying to convince you and show you why you should continue to love it or come back to loving it or start loving it. But tonight's episode is my answers to the most vocal and I think probably most popular Star Wars detractor in the internet today and all of social media, from YouTube to Twitter to all the Star Wars sites and stuff. He's being quoted everywhere. I see it everywhere. I see a lot of rip-off guys that are doing similar videos to him, giving out the same type of complaints, but Doomcock did it first, and I think most of the YouTube critics, maybe not all, but most of them are just ripping him off, and it's a popular thing to do these days. So let me quit explaining what the show is about and let's start going into it. You'll get to know me more as the show goes on, who I am, where I come from. I come from the world of professional wrestling. I recently rejected the world of professional wrestling. I turned my back on it and left it for many of the reasons anti-Star Wars fans or riled up Star Wars fans are rejecting Star Wars. It's silly, it's goofy, it's over the top. So somebody's going to say, well, then, you should understand them. I do understand them. I do understand these jilted Star Wars fans. But my argument to them is either learn to accept where Star Wars is going and has gone, or turn your back on it and find some other form of entertainment. Don't stick around and be this sourpuss that is just raining on everybody's parade. Okay? I'm experienced in that. I know what that's like. It's not going to do you any favors. It's not going to change anything. No director in Hollywood's going to stop and say, hey, let's listen to Doomcock and his people. Guys, it's just not going to happen. It's not. But I am going to be the voice of reason against the mighty Doomcock and his followers on episode 1 of This Is the Way. Number 1, character development. Now, real quick before I continue, guys, this is going to jump around because Doomcock complaints they don't go in order. Okay, when he blasted the Rise of Skywalker, which I will say I loved, I thought it was a great movie, great Star Wars movie, one of the greatest movies of all time. Absolutely not. Great in the spectrum of the Star Wars world. Absolutely. Now, when Doomcock, he didn't shoot with a precise rifle when he tried to shoot this. He didn't have the Mandalorian's rifle. No. He used the bowcaster or something, where they had a wide angle shot and he went all over the place. So as I jump around here, I'm just following the complaints that Doomcock laid out, and I wrote them down in order, okay, that he went over them. And his first complaint was character development. Now I'm going to agree, for the first 2 movies, I thought the character development in this new trilogy was weak. They just weren't as interesting as Han, Leia, Chewbacca, Luke, Lando. They just weren't as interesting. They didn't grip you in the same way. I don't know exactly why. I'm not a cinema photographer. I'm not I can't talk. I'm not expert in filmmaking and such, and I don't claim to be. But there was a reason those characters weren't as interesting. Rey was the most interesting, but because she was so mysterious, that kept even her interest, my interest in her character, down, because okay, she's kind of cool, she's kind of kick-ass, but don't know enough about her. I think her heritage should have been revealed in The Last Jedi, but I don't think Rian Johnson was prepared to give her a heritage. Okay, I think that's a problem. I think I am not here to hate on Rian Johnson like so many Star Wars fans do. I don't think The Last Jedi was a terrible film. It was the worst of the 3, by far, simply because of what they did to Luke. I mean, turning Luke into this goofy, depressed, angry, island-sitting weirdo just ruined The Last Jedi to me. Well, it didn't ruin it. I know I'm using some of Doomcock's language. It didn't do anything for me. I would rate The Last Jedi as a 7 out of 10 because I didn't hate it. It had elements that I liked, but the whole Luke thing messed it up. And the character development in the first 2 movies was poor. The first one wasn't as bad. It was going somewhere. The Force Awakens. It was going somewhere with character development. The second one slammed the brakes on character development because, in my opinion, it seemed like Rian Johnson wanted to explore new things in the world of Star Wars, new people, new Jedi, new everything. He over-newed it. He newed it to death, if you will. And the character development slowed to a halt. I believe The Rise of Skywalker picked the character development way back up. I mean, I became way more interested in the incredible pilot, cocky and funny guy, Poe. I mean, my interest in him as a character rose dramatically watching him operate in The Rise of Skywalker. Same way with Finn. Finn started to show us that he was force sensitive. It started to grow, and it started to, he had a secret he wanted to tell Rey. Now, a lot of people believe that secret was he wanted to say, I love you. It's possible, but I think he wanted to tell her that, hey, there's something in me that is connecting with the Force. Maybe he wanted to train with her. I think that was going to come out of him. Never did, but that was starting to be developed, so I want to see more of that. I want to see more of Poe. I mean, I remember somebody, who was it? Was it J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson? One of them said that Poe was the new Han Solo, and I cringed at that when it was said. I saw more of that possibility in Rise of Skywalker than I ever have. Yes, he was helped piloting the Falcon and with Chewie and stuff like that, but It was development. He seemed cooler. He seemed more badass. I liked it. Finn seemed more Jedi-like, or like he was clearly going that direction. I liked it. The character development for those two was good. Rey's character development jumped 100%. I mean, she's training to be a Jedi. She's trying to connect instantly. The film starts you by showing Rey trying to connect with former Jedi. That Leia's trying to tell her that that's possible. That there's this way to connect with all the Jedi who have gone on before you. They didn't go into detail how to do it, but she was trying to do it. She failed in the beginning, but she was trying to do it. So immediately they set that precedent that this could be done. The character development was much greater in Rise of Skywalker because I left that movie wanting to know even more about those characters that I got to know then. Doomcock's next complaint was, Han's coming back as a Force ghost. Can you believe this, people? Han Solo. They are ruining the saga by bringing back Han Solo as a Force ghost. And he doesn't come back as a Force ghost. He was a memory. I mean, for crying out loud, it was like a super daydream. Ben Solo, before he is redeemed, sees a vision of his father, has a conversation with him. I believe it was all in his head. From everything I saw, it was in his head. Oh, but he touched his face. Well, in his head. In his daydream. Somebody proposed in a Star Wars group that I'm a part of, and I like this idea. I'm not saying I know it to be true, but if it were to be true, I would like it. I think it's a good one. He asked, did Leia project that vision into her son's mind? Think about it, folks. As she was dying, or as she died, that's when that conversation took place. So is it a possibility that that's what happened? Leia died, ultimately, because she used the Force, much like Luke, rather than to project herself, but to project her former husband, her widowed husband, to her son, because she believed that would help bring him back to the light. I love that idea. I think that's very possible. But ultimately, right now, I'm going with it was a daydream. It was a powerful daydream. It was a powerful memory, a Force memory, a Force vision that got to Ben. And I believe Leia may have had a part of it. It got to Ben, and it affected him dramatically. He wasn't a Force ghost. It was a good moment. We got to see Harrison Ford again in the Han Solo role, if just for a few moments. And people are going to say, well, that was fan service. Well, I'm a fan service me all you want, guys. I liked it. I think it worked. He wasn't a Force ghost, which would have been pathetic. So bring on more things like that. It worked, and it's nothing to complain about. Okay, I am looking at some notes here because I got to remember these in order. Next was the Sith dagger. Doomcock. How horrible to have a Sith dagger. It looked like a toy or blah, blah, blah. Look, the dagger belonged to a Sith warrior, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not going to remember his name, who was out there searching for a wayfinder to get to the Sith world. Okay? And we never got to see this guy. Maybe he's in past comics or books or something I haven't read. But, sounds like a badass, I could see, why couldn't a Sith warrior carry a dagger around? Throw it or something. If he's ever disarmed of his lightsaber or something, or a blaster and a dagger, why wouldn't a Sith master or warrior or whatever be armed to the teeth with many things? So he had a dagger, big deal. And the way to the wayfinder was on the dagger. Oh, well, that's just convoluted and confusing. Why? Why is that convoluted and confusing? The wayfinder was hidden. There was only 2 of them. Finding this Sith world was difficult. And you had to have a map, a special GPS to know. You had to have coordinates for your GPS to know how to get to this world. I really don't know what the big deal about that was. And so these 2 wayfinders were hidden. One, Kylo Ren, Ben Solo had in his possession. The other one was hidden. Rey was out there trying to find the other one. So they were going on missions trying to find this wayfinder. And part of that mission was to find this dagger because the former owner of the dagger had inscribed how to find the wayfinder onto this dagger. Now, I do understand that sounds like jumping through a lot of hoops. But I don't have a real problem with that. Why wouldn't the owner of that dagger maybe say, hey, I'm going to hide this someplace, or I'm going to give it back to Palpatine, or I'm going to do something where it can be stored, but I'm going to inscribe on my favorite dagger how to find it. Because I'm going to be the only one who has this dagger. I mean, he's not going to think ahead. What if I lose it? What if I do this? I'm sure he's confident enough that he's not thinking that. And I'm going to have this dagger. That way, if I ever need or want it back, I pull this dagger out and remind myself of the coordinates of how to find it. slightly convoluted, but it's not ruining the saga. And oh my gosh, it's so stupid. It's such poor writing. Why? I mean, some of you people's expectations, you expect Star Wars to be some scholarly, otherworldly, uplifting, almost religious text or something like we're watching Shakespeare or something. Big deal. I mean, you need to get over yourself sometimes, I just think. Vader's sacrifice was ruined with Palpatine living. Oh my, this is another saga ruining, story ruining, franchise ruining. Doomcock says they reached back the annals of time and grabbed the return of the Jedi and crushed it. They destroyed the ending story by allowing Palpatine to remain alive. Guys, Palpatine's supposed death, and there's still a chance he did die in Return of the Jedi, but Palpatine's death wasn't the point. Do you watch Star Wars? Or are you confusing it with something else? The point of Return of the Jedi, and Luke said it countless times, it wasn't defeating Vader, it wasn't defeating Palpatine. That wasn't talked about as Luke's goal and mission and point. What was Luke's goal, mission, and point in Return of the Jedi? You're going to say, you said it, right? To redeem Anakin. To turn Anakin back to the light side of the Force. That was his point. I mean, if Palpatine died or was destroyed or was stopped along the way, wonderful. I mean, he definitely wanted to help his friends win the war. Of course he did. But Palpatine dying wasn't really fulfilling the prophecy. And not from what I see. The prophecy was Anakin had to bring balance to the Force. So if Anakin's a bad guy, if Anakin's a Sith, if Anakin is all enveloped in the dark side, how's he going to bring balance back? Was killing Palpatine bringing balance back, or would an alive Anakin in the light side be enough to bring the balance back? That could be argued, I guess. But I would also argue that it looks likely that Palpatine was killed. So even if that was the mission, even if that was what the Chosen One was supposed to do, rather than just winning him back to the light and establishing that he's a good guy now, even as he dies, if part of it was also having to kill Palpatine, I think he did. I mean, that's not completely established because Palpatine is back in this movie, so how is he back? That's another, how is he back? Oh my goodness, this doesn't make sense. This is terrible, terrible, terrible. We don't know officially how he's back, but there are countless possibilities, from cloning, which I don't believe that's what it was, to the dark side. What is the quote where the dark side is used in mysterious ways that, confound people? And it's kind of a creepy quote. The idea being like, oh my goodness, what are they doing with the dark side over there? Ooh. He said he has died before. Pelagius has died in the past. It seems to be a common theme, especially in the dark side of the Force, for these evil Sith and Sith Lords and Sith Masters to possibly die and somehow return. Palpatine returns looking hideous. Did he even have a lower half? Where was his legs? He was missing fingers. He was all beat up. He looked like he had been in an explosion. Imagine that. There's also, if you read the Kylo Ren comic book, which is canon in the story, the Kylo Ren comic book that was released not too long ago, there is a scene where he meets Snoke, okay? And Snoke trains him in the dark side. And his first lesson is pushing Kylo off a cliff. And Kylo having to figure out how to stop himself from falling with the Force. Now, people are going to say, well, if you have to read other source materials to explain a movie, then that's bad writing. Then call it bad writing if you absolutely must. But is it really saga ruining, story ruining, reaching back on the annals of time and crushing Return of the Jedi? No. You can call it bad writing if you want. I can live with that. But to act like this crazy Doomcock and his followers act like, that everything is destroyed because there's something that you might not fully understand and might have to pick up another piece of source material to get a grasp on, destroys the franchise. You're crazy. You're crazy. You're ridiculously simple. Put it that way. I mean, just that's how you get the YouTube clicks, folks. That's what it's about. If I come on here and just say how bad something sucks, there's so many people out there waiting to eat that up and wanting to be a part of the cancel culture that you can make a living in the Star Wars social media world by being all negative, and I'm not going to do it. It does make sense. Okay, Palpatine could have clearly used the Force to stop his fall and somehow escaped. No, I don't know how exactly, but it's very possible. It's possible that he died. He said he had died before. And how does he rise back from the death? I don't know. That hasn't fully been explained, but we have seen Force healing. So is there a dark version of that? Can somehow their spirit be transferred back into their dead body, although they're much, much lesser for it, using the dark side? Think of that. I'm just spitballing here, but if the Jedi, and we've seen Baby Yoda do it on The Mandalorian, and we've seen Rey and Ben do it, if they can put their hands on somebody and heal them, and in the most extreme situation, which seemed to have killed him, Ben, can raise somebody from death, could the dark side of that simply be they can return from death on their own, but they're in the condition Palpatine was in? Which was pretty rough. I mean, the man was undead, basically. I mean, he was in pretty rough shape. And the only way he got any better was by zapping some of the life force out of Rey and Ben. And that seemed to restore him to a degree, but not completely. Not 100%. Much better than he was, but not 100%. So the dark side of the Force is capable of things that you're unable to understand. So how are they going to explain something in a movie when that quote says that it's inconceivable? Some things you just have to accept on faith, guys. And you don't have to like it. Okay, that's a big difference. Doomcock and your followers, you don't have to like what I'm saying. And I'm perfectly fine if you roll your eyes out and say, well, that's dumb, or I don't really like to accept that. Don't accept it. But to go out there and say it ruins a franchise that you love and supposedly promote. I mean, you're out there trashing something you claim to love. I mean, you're the abuser. In that analogy, Doomcock and your followers, you're the abuser. You're taking your beautiful wife, Star Wars, something that you have treasured and held up and to a lofty standard for, if you're like me, your whole entire life. And because it's doing some things that you don't like or think doesn't make sense or don't have to pick up a comic book to understand, you're smacking her around and bruising her up and not making anybody... Who wants to watch Star Wars after hearing some of you guys lament that it's the worst thing you've ever seen? I saw a guy on a Star Wars board today say... he posted an article that said the Rise of Skywalker was absolute trash. And I tried to talk to this guy. How can you be a Star Wars fan and call the ending, the wrap-up, the climax absolute trash? How are you a fan? And he's like, well, how can I not be a fan of something that may not be that great? Look, if you're out there looking for entertainment, something for fun and entertainment, and you choose to like something that you think is trash in its summary and its climax and its conclusion, I'm sorry, guys, I don't get it. Get with the program or find some other form of entertainment. And I'm preaching to the choir, guys, because real quick, I was in the professional wrestling business, okay, for years. A commentator, backstage interviewer, podcast host. I had 3 or 4 podcasts. I wrote for numerous articles for numerous wrestling websites, including my own WrestlingDoneRight.com and other things. I'm out of that business. Why? Because it reached a point to where I hated how it looked and what it was doing and where it was going. And so, after having been a fan for 40-some years, just as long as I've been a Star Wars fan, 42 years, I turned my back on that industry because I hate it. I hate where it's gone and where it's going and where it continues to go. And I love the old stuff, just like a lot of you guys love the original trilogy and stuff. That's me. I love the 80s and 90s professional wrestling. Not WWE. I was a big NWA, WCW, the old territory guys, USWA, World Class. I'm not going to sit here and talk about wrestling. Just bear with me to make this one point. But then I realized that it's just gotten so bad that it's not what I loved anymore, and I won't be a part of it, and I'm not even going to be a fan anymore. So to continue to embrace something and claim to love it while hating and calling it trash and garbage and saga ruining makes no sense to me. Find something else and leave those of us who love this universe, this galaxy, to defend it. You've turned into Sith and you're killing something you claim to have once loved. And it's a sad thing to see. Vader's sacrifice was not ruined. Okay? Vader was redeemed. And that was the bigger part of Return of the Jedi. He was redeemed back to the light side. And if you can't see this from these movies and the other movies, that redemption and self-sacrifice is the biggest story of the light side of the Force, bigger than who they kill and take out, then I don't know what you've been watching. Palpatine. Palpatine was the biggest antagonist of the Star Wars saga, not Vader. Okay, now, I like Vader as much as the next guy is a bad guy. Sweet bad guy. Awesome story. Great powers. Fun to watch. He didn't get enough screen time in taking out enemies and such. He didn't. There needs to be a Vader movie. Maybe a Vader trilogy. From the time he turned from Anakin to Vader until the time he died, or until the time at least close to that. We need to see a movie about Darth Vader. It would be awesome. Okay? But, that said, Palpatine was the bigger antagonist. Take a look at Palpatine throughout the entire saga. He was trained by Darth Plagueis, who we've never gotten to see, and I don't know if I'm saying his name right, because I don't think it's ever been said in a film. I've only read it. But he was trained by this much evil Sith Lord, took over from him, inserted himself into the Senate, okay, became the leader of the Senate, turned and became the evil emperor of the Empire, and spent his entire time in the story, in the saga, corrupting Jedi to stand at his side. Palpatine, you know, and I'm making this argument because another thing Doomcock said was, this is the Palpatine saga, this isn't the Skywalker story, this is all about Palpatine, 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 how terrible. Well, I'm telling you, it was the Skywalker saga, but Skywalker's biggest antagonist by far was Palpatine, not Vader. Vader was simply Luke's dad, who had fallen to the dark side, who was the prophecy. Yes, he was a big part in that way. But even so, he wasn't the biggest antagonist. He wasn't the biggest enemy. He wasn't the biggest bad guy. Palpatine was. Palpatine corrupted Anakin, the kid who was supposed to restore balance to the Force, took him and corrupted him, and he served under Palpatine for how many years? 30? At least 30 years, killing Jedi children, doing all he could to destroy the Jedi. Okay, and when he was redeemed and made well, what did he do? Well, before that, he tried to get Luke. He wanted to get Luke to strike his father down and take his place. Here, I'm going to get your son to come in here and kill you so he can be my new apprentice, my new sidekick, my new Jedi killer. Didn't work. They talked about going after Leia. Well, then we'll get your daughter. You know, I'll go and get your daughter. And that infuriated Luke, so that didn't work. But they didn't give up. What did they do? They went and they got Ben. Let's get Ben now, you know. Then they even had a backup plan to Ben, and that was clearly Rey. So do you see the point I'm trying to make here? Palpatine is a major part of this story. Major, major, major. He is the biggest antagonist in all of the Star Wars universe. I mean, he rose from death or came back from near death or whatever happened in that situation, used the evil, vile, dark side of the Force to rise from death and come back and continue to taunt and go after the Skywalkers and anybody that would label themselves a Jedi. It is not the Palpatine saga, but he is a close second. And when he got Ben, when he corrupted Ben, he always must have had it in his mind that these people can be won back. Vader could be won back, so let me go get Luke. Well, that didn't work, I'll go get Leia. Well, that didn't work, I'll get Leia and Han's son. Okay, that one took, but I also know that these people have good in them, so I got to have a backup. Finally, he gets the idea, clearly, to use a blood relative as a successor. Maybe, just maybe, Palpatine's thinking, this will work. I don't have to worry about her turning good because she's of my own blood. My granddaughter will be Empress Palpatine. Maybe, finally, something will work. And it didn't. You don't see the irony in that? This man went out and recruited Skywalkers left and right. Some he succeeded in getting, some he did not, as his right-hand man or woman to strike down all that was good and all that they stood for. He succeeded in getting Anakin, the biggest Skywalker of them all. He succeeded in getting Ben, who seemed powerful beyond words. And both of them turned. And in the person he probably had the most confidence in, his own flesh and blood, his own granddaughter, Rey Palpatine, is good from the start. I mean, this girl, yes, she had a little flirtation with the dark side thanks to Kylo, thanks to Ben. But ultimately she rejected it, and rejected it, it seemed to me, as easy as Luke did, as easy as Leia did. She was up there with them. Did you ever see that? Have you ever known a family of good people, good, decent people, sometimes good Christian people? I'm going to drop a religion in there. And they have a sibling, they have a son, they have a father. One person in the family is an evil piece of garbage, but yet all the rest of them are great. Or vice versa. You got this family that's pretty pathetic, pretty vile, pretty rotten in the community, but they got this one member, this one son or the mom or somebody in that family's great and wonderful, and you ask yourself, how do they fit in there? What happened with that one? Or what happened to the rest of them? That's what we're looking at. Palpatine went after the Skywalkers like a man possessed, trying to corrupt all of them because he knew the power they held. That didn't work, so he thought, well, the hell with it. I'll go and get my own flesh and blood, who power will flow through like never anyone has ever experienced, and she'll simply take the throne, and I won't have to worry about this. And in the end, she's good, she's pure, she's with the light side, and barely even flirts with the dark side, and ends up being the person to thwart his plans fully. And at the end, okay, folks, look, that's the irony. The Skywalkers messed with the whole saga long. Skywalker's screwed with by this Palpatine guy, right? Just screwed with. Finally, he brings his own flesh and blood in, and she screws him. That's the irony. That's the great point of this situation. Well, where was the rise of Skywalker? Ben was redeemed and rose in that situation because, again, Star Wars is about redemption and self-sacrifice, not the murder of their enemies. Stopping and killing their enemies is fine, and of course to win the war has to happen, but that's not what rising in the Force is. Rising in the Force is self-sacrifice and redemption. Self-sacrifice and redemption. Self-sacrifice and redemption. And Ben rose when he sacrificed himself so that Rey could continue. Now, summing all of this up, that Rey, the flesh and blood of the man who tormented the Skywalkers forever, rose up and defeated her flesh and blood, her grandfather, and struck him down. She didn't really strike him down. We're going to get to that later. But whenever she came against him and he was defeated and he was ruined, that wasn't enough. She went forward, took the name Skywalker and gave it to herself. Now, some people are rolling their eyes at that. Some people are saying it was stupid. Some people, even the one YouTube channel that I like, Star Wars Theory, like that guy. Sorry, I just started watching him. Don't remember his name. Great guy. I like his demeanor. I like his shows. But even he thought that was dumb. He said it was dumb. Rey taking the Skywalker name. It wasn't. It was the ultimate finish. It was the ultimate finish. Have any of you ever had an enemy? Have you ever really had a true enemy? Most people don't. Most people don't go through their life. Most people go through their whole lives never really. They had someone they didn't get along with. They had a fight with somebody, but they never had an enemy. I've had an enemy. Okay, I worked at a place where one of the supervisors of this organization hated me and what I stood for. I wasn't breaking rules. I just did things in a way that he didn't like, but couldn't stop because they weren't breaking the rules. I don't want to get into it because I don't want anyone to figure out what it was. But this man hated me. He did all he could to undermine me, to undercut me, to put me down, to insult me and what I did. Everything he could. And I came to loathe this man. I try not to hate anyone, but I really came to loathe this man. Could not stand him. Now imagine if my daughter, whom I love more than anything, were to one day turn on me. Now, we're not going to have lightsaber fights, of course. But she were to turn on me and just begin to hate me for some reason. And walk out of my life, walk out of me and my wife's life and be done with us. And that would hurt. And that would be painful. And I would be depressed and I would be sad. But if she then went and changed her last name to that man who loathed me so much, that would hurt worse than anything else she could do to me. I would just as soon as she take a knife and stab me in the chest and just end me, than to go and take the name of the man who was my enemy for much of my life. Not now, because I've just forgotten him, forgiven him, and moved on. But if that happened today still, it would crush me to a point that I don't know how it would continue. That was the crowning moment of the Rey story when she took the Skywalker name. Palpatine be damned. That's what Adam Palpatine's here to do. I'm here to redeem the name Palpatine. But Rey, she rejected it. Hitler, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody likes Hitler. Nobody in their right mind, right? Why don't you hear anybody with that last name anymore? Don't you believe that anybody back in those times that had the name Hitler changed it immediately? Same concept. Who's going to continue to go through life with the name Hitler? Nobody. I'm sure anybody with that name back in those days immediately changed it. That's also a reason I'm sure Rey took the name Skywalker. Think about it. And Luke and Leia obviously didn't begrudge it. Their Force ghosts were there smiling at the end. They were fine with it, so you need to get over it too. Now look, one thing Doomcock complained about, he had the nerve to call Han, however you say it. I've always said Han, but I think the absolute appropriate way to say it might be Han. But he had the nerve to call Han, my man, a deadbeat dad. Now, I don't think Doomcock really feels that way, but he called him that because of how he ran from his family. Look, how many of you experienced real tragedy in your lives? I think many of you complainers have never really experienced real tragedy. He didn't stop loving Leia, and she didn't stop loving him. That was obvious. But, okay, my daughter is great friends, best friends with a young woman who was happily married. Their child got cancer. Is fine now, thank God. But through the treatment and through the turmoil of that, her and her husband split. Folks, that's common. That happens every day. We're talking about a couple whose child turned legitimately evil and attempted to kill other people. Now, if you read the Kylo comic book, you'll find out that's not necessarily true. Read the Kylo comic book. But anyway, he turned evil, vile, as bad as you can be in that world, in that universe, in that galaxy. And that's not supposed to affect their marriage in the end. We don't know how long. Maybe they stayed together a year or two after. Maybe it just got so stressful that they agreed to spend some time apart. They were probably yelling at each other and blaming each other and consoling each other one minute and yelling at each other the next. Who knows? But they clearly still love each other. He's not a deadbeat dad. He might have been depressed. He did what was best for his family. I hate that they killed him. I do. Han was my favorite character in all the Star Wars universe. No one else is even close. But, guys, self-sacrifice. Han sacrificed himself in an attempt to win back his son. And if he had to do it again, he'd do it again. You know he would. Self-sacrifice. And in the end, it worked. It took longer than that moment. But in the end, that sacrifice brought Ben back and caused Ben to perform the same action for Rey, sacrificing himself for another. Again, the constant theme of Star Wars that too many of you are missing out on based on your love and adoration of these characters, which I have as well. But you cannot let your love and adoration for these characters blind you to the story of self-sacrifice that Star Wars is clearly all about. How many people have sacrificed themselves in these movies? How many? More than I can count off the top of my head. It is a constant theme. Han did it. Leia did it in the end. Ben did it in the end. Luke did it in the end. Anakin did it. Countless light side Force users or just good people like Han sacrificed their lives in an effort to redeem or save someone else or a group of people. That's how Star Wars works. Another complaint from Doomcock is Palpatine said, "You must kill me, Rey. Strike me down, then I will possess you and roll through your body." Okay. But she didn't do it. She didn't strike him down. People are saying, she did. She defeated him, but she killed him and he didn't possess her. What kind of stupid storytelling is that? She didn't strike him down. Watch the movie with better eyes next time. Okay? What did Rey do? She defeated him, I would say. But she did not take her lightsaber like I have hanging up. I can't quite call mine with the Force yet. I'm not up to that point. Kicking her off the wall. And defended herself. He tries to strike her down because she won't turn. Sounds familiar, Anakin? Luke wouldn't turn, and he has to be killed. Rey wouldn't turn, she has to be killed. She's defending the lightning. Oh, she's so powerful, she's so powerful. She's a frickin' Palpatine, of course she's powerful. But she didn't train. I think we'll get to that later, but whenever Rey first met Kylo face to face and he invaded her mind. Do you remember that when he was reading her mind, trying to find out what she knew? Remember that? He unlocked her mind and you could see it happen. She started reading his mind in return and he backed off, shocked and surprised and looking like, what the hell is that? And then not long after that is when she used the Jedi mind trick on the stormtrooper. How did she know that? She got it from Ben's mind. She got it from that special bond that they had, that the Emperor himself, that Palpatine himself said hadn't been seen. A bond like that in the Force hadn't been seen in centuries. So that was uniquely special, and she was incredibly strong. So she's defending the lightning with one hand until she gets the other lightsaber and has the cross effect and is defending the lightning. She never strikes him down. She never gets angry and starts battling him. She never gets mad. She just continues to defend herself. Defend herself, defend herself, defend herself, until Palpatine's own Force lightning is reversed back onto himself. If you read some of the Star Wars books and comic books, you will see Sith talking about the Force taking vengeance on the Sith. The Force actually coming back against them, angry at them using the Force to their own regard in any way they see fit. That is talked about in canon books. That's what we see here. The Force is reflected by the light that is in Rey, and comes back and envelops the man trying to destroy another and takes him out. Rey did not strike him down. She did not. She dies. At least it sure looks like it. After that incredible battle, she collapses in death because it took everything out of her. Self-sacrifice. What was that, Adam? Self-sacrifice once again, in an attempt to go after Palpatine, in an attempt to defend with all that she could, without striking down herself. It costs her her life. She gives of herself, all that she has, to overcome the darkness that is in her own grandfather and stand for the light. She gives her own life and collapses. It should be applauded, not mocked. And what does Ben do? Well, first of all, he survived a fall. Going back to the Kylo books, you will see he was trained by Snoke on how to stop a fall, how to rescue himself from dying from a fall. Came back up, held Rey in his arms, who again, a girl, a woman that he has a special Force bond with, that Palpatine himself said has not been seen for centuries, and revives her with his own life force. What do we call that? What's the theme of Star Wars too many of you are forgetting or overlooking or not attributing enough credence to? Self-sacrifice. Sacrifices himself to bring Rey back. And that, my friends, is when Ben Solo rose. That's when Ben Skywalker rose. Because rising in regard to Ben is not taking that lightsaber and standing as King of the Jedi. Master Ben. That is not what rising is. Is that what Anakin did? To fulfill the prophecy? No. Anakin killed himself. Self-sacrificed himself for the cause of another. And there is Luke's son, Anakin's nephew, worshipping the ground Vader walked on by keeping his helmet and what other piece of his garb that he could. Realizing then that following the footsteps of the great Anakin Skywalker was not being on the dark side, murdering Jedi and being wicked. It was laying down your life for another that was seeking to walk in the light, that did not step out of bounds and follow the dark side. And that's what Anakin did. That's what Anakin did, and it's what Ben did. And that, folks, is what made Rey fall in love with Ben. She told him earlier in the movie, I love Ben Skywalker, not Kylo Ren. She always knew, felt, saw what was in him, just like Luke knew, felt, saw what was in Anakin. There's a parallel here, folks. Luke always knew there was good in him. Luke told his dad how long before the battle that I know there's good in you. Even in the face of Vader denying it, he said that. Same thing here. She did not fall in love with the murderer, Kylo Ren. She did not fall in love with the guy that killed his dad. She did not fall in love with the guy who contributed to the death of Jedi students. She fell in love with the good side, the light side. Ben Solo, that she knew was there and was right, and killed Kylo Ren and himself, Ben Solo, lay down his life for Rey. Now people question this: why didn't Rey disappear before Ben could get there and save her with his life force? Why didn't she disappear? I got to admit, I don't have an absolute answer for that, but I have a theory that I think is good. Okay, we know that Qui-Gon Jinn taught the Jedi Order how to turn into Force Ghosts. He was the very first one to do it, and taught other Jedi how to do it. That's in canon. He definitely is the one who established this. How do we know that isn't the Jedi who dies choice of when they do this? As long as they do it before their body absolutely rots or something, maybe they could even do it then. I don't know. Where are they when they die? Are they just floating around in the Force, not being able to be seen, and they can manifest as a ghost whenever they feel like it? It's possible. And there is a little bit of fact in the movies to point this out. If you remember, in A New Hope, of course you'd remember, when Obi-Wan and Vader face off on the Death Star in the lightsaber battle, and the stormtroopers surround them, and Obi-Wan knows he's toast. You know, how are you going to beat a guy when you got a bunch of stormtroopers with blasters around? Although, in today's day and age, what we see from the Force, they probably got out of that. But anyhow, what does Obi-Wan do? Turns his lightsaber off and tells Vader, you know, I will only grow more powerful once you strike me down. But Vader didn't strike him down. Why? Because Obi-Wan vanished before that could happen. Obi-Wan chose to go into the Force, become a Forced ghost, even though we didn't see that immediately. Didn't see it immediately. But we saw him disappear at will, did we not? He disappeared at will. He chose to vanish, go into the Force, become a Force ghost, whatever happened to him, without being killed. He wasn't killed. He was never struck with the lightsaber. Vader poked his cloak around like, where the hell did he go? There is precedent, folks, that the Jedi, when dead, choose when their body disappears. If you can choose for your body to disappear before death comes to you, why could you not choose to manifest into a ghost to vanish 2, 3, 4 minutes after you die? It's not ridiculous to say that's possible. It's not. It's ridiculous to say it is canon destroying or story destroying or bad, horrible writing. For that. It's just not. You've got to use your head in comparison to what you've seen in past Star Wars films, books, movies, and what have you. That's what I'm here for, though, so I'm hoping I'm helping you out there. Look at my notes, see what else we got to talk about here. There are a couple more. The Palpatine alive, we talked about that. How could he be alive? Could be he stopped his death by stopping his fall. He could be, he could have regenerated somehow through the dark side. That was my best argument earlier. If you didn't hear it, folks, that go back and watch it, please. From the beginning of the video, I'm making a lot of good points. I feel strong about all the things that I'm saying. If the light side has Force healing, that you can give your life force to raise somebody from the dead, the counter to that might be, I think it's a good theory, that the dark side has a way of regenerating their own life, but it's like in a deformed, decrepit, maybe even more evil way, like we saw Palpatine. I think that's very possible. Here's a good question that I struggle to answer, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Okay, Palpatine not Palpatine, Doomcock. Sorry, got the two confused. They're both kind of evil guys in hoods and masks that look ugly. Just kidding, for the most part. Doomcock says, Yoda destroyed the tree and the Jedi trembled by calling lightning down from the sky. Luke Skywalker catches the lightsaber that Rey throws through the air. If Force ghosts can interact with the real legitimate world, why don't they all just return and pick up lightsabers and call lightning down on Palpatine and all of the Sith and end everything? That's a good question. That's a good question. When you're going to give Force ghosts the ability to interact in the real world, and by that I mean touching, carrying actual things. Luke also raised the X-Wing out of the waters as a Force ghost. Yoda called down lightning, which why is Yoda using dark side power? But called down lightning to destroy the tree. Maybe it wasn't Force lightning. He actually called down weather lightning to do it. That's just a theory. So they're interacting with the real world. Why don't they just go fight in these battles? Here's what I think. A theory, but based on some fact. We have seen Force ghosts interact with the world before. They sit, right? Do they not? They sit down. Yeah, that's kind of my only argument, and I know it's not a real strong one. But we have seen them sit on stumps. We have seen them sit on logs, and they don't, fall through them, right? I mean, I think of the Bible, and I'm not going to preach to you here, but I think of the Bible and how Jesus walked through walls, right? Did Jesus lean up against the wall? Or the Bible doesn't really say. But that's sort of how I picture it. Why would a ghost need to sit? I mean, not that they need to, but how could they? Wouldn't they just sort of hover or float? But instead they're sitting on logs and stumps and such like that. So they seem to be able to interact with stuff, with things. This is where I'm going. Catching a lightsaber, calling up a spaceship, an X-wing, calling down lightning, is interacting with the physical world, but it's not interacting with a physical person. Maybe, and this is just a theory, the limitation to their interaction is with humans. Did they ever push anybody? Did they ever fight anybody? Did they ever slap anybody? They never did that. What we've seen is them interact with objects, but not with people. So that's my weakest argument. I'll admit that. That's my weakest argument, but I believe it has to be something like that, or why wouldn't they come back and fight in battles and stuff like that? There has to be something in that regard. They cannot interact with physical beings, but they can interact with objects. That's the way I'm choosing to look at that, and I am admitting that's not a real strong argument, but it's all I got right now. So that is one of the criticisms that I would like to see better answered. Guaranteed. Force healing. Oh, Doomcock and his followers are just having a breakdown over force healing. I mean, if we have force healing, we can just go around, so-and-so could have healed so-and-so. Luke could have healed Anakin, Obi-Wan could have healed Qui-Gon. All these examples of Jedi and other good guys that have died that could have been healed. So why weren't they? Those people didn't have force healing powers? I mean, does every single Jedi have the exact same powers to the exact same degree? I think it's been established that they don't. I mean, for a while, Luke couldn't raise an X-wing out of the waters, and Yoda could do it, not easily, but not with a great struggle. Now, Luke's Force Ghost rose that X-wing, but, I mean, there's been clear examples of Jedi that just don't have as good of powers or the same powers as someone else. We're also seeing Force healing introduced on The Mandalorian. It was introduced there because that was shown there before the movie was released. The little tiny Yoda, baby Yoda, which they don't like you to call it that. He has a name that they haven't revealed yet, but they're calling him the child. The little Yoda creature healed on The Mandalorian. And I'm sorry if you've not seen it yet, and that's a spoiler, but he does. He heals someone with a fatal wound, and it knocks him out. Like, it doesn't kill him, but he probably sleeps for hours or days afterwards. It takes a lot out of you, which we see with Rey and Ben. It takes a lot out of them. Now, Rey it didn't take as much out of because he wasn't dead when she healed him. He had a bad wound. Same way with Baby Yoda. But Rey isn't a baby, so when she just healed a wound, even though it was a mortal one, didn't take too much out of her. But if you heal somebody from death, if you raise somebody from death, or the bigger healing you do, the more it takes out of you, the more it costs you. That's what I see in The Mandalorian. That's what I see in Rise of Skywalker. Now, I'm going to blow your minds here because a lot of you don't realize this. Listen up. Please listen up here. There was force healing in A New Hope. What? What am I talking about? There was force healing in A New Hope. Go back and watch when Luke is attacked by the Sand People. What is Obi-Wan doing to him afterward? Take a close look at that and tell me if he isn't using the Force to heal Luke's wounds. There was force healing in Star Wars back in A New Hope. That's something that there's, guys, it's something you're just going to have to accept. You don't have to accept it, but for God's sake, stop saying, oh, it's just going to destroy the saga. Everything you don't like isn't destroying this saga. Everything you don't like isn't ruining Star Wars. It's ridiculous, and you sound ridiculous, and you're just part of the cancel culture when you say stuff like that. That's all. Congratulations for being part of a bunch of goofballs that just want to ruin everything. We're almost at the end here, folks. We're almost at the hour mark, so we're just probably going to be a little over the hour in episode 1 here of the podcast. This is the way. Thank you for joining me. Now, the next up is Rey got the Falcon. She gets the Falcon. She gets Luke's home. She gets everything. Man, she got BB-8. She got... How do we know she has the Falcon? Because we saw it fly in and land? How do we know that Chewie and Lando and Poe just ain't dropping her off? I mean, that's a simple answer, but how do we know that? Do we know beyond a shadow of a doubt? Do we know that it's a fact that the Falcon is hers? Maybe, but I don't want to believe that. If it is, it doesn't ruin the franchise. It's unfair that she gets the Falcon. Pretty damn good pilot, and Chewbacca loves her, so maybe, but I believe she's probably just dropped off. I believe Rey would want her friends to have that ship in fighting battles or taking care of themselves. So I don't think she got the Falcon. We don't know that for a fact. So in the very least, you don't know it so much that it's worth throwing a fit over, guys. So calm down. She got BB-8. Maybe that was BB-8's choice. You know what? Because Poe is probably with R2. Poor R2. How many? I mean, everybody suffered great loss in these series of 9 movies, but R2 has lost everybody. Everybody except C-3PO, I guess, and he had to restore his memory, and did he get it all? Hopefully. So R2-D2 is probably with Poe. And so BB-8 went with Rey. I don't know. They had a good bond. It was Poe's droid, absolutely. But maybe, BB-8 was torn. He likes both of them. He helped Rey numerous times, especially on Jakku. So maybe he just decided to go with her. It was a droid's choice. I mean, never underestimate a droid, right? And if he wanted that and R2 wanted to stay with Poe, they worked it out and everything's cool. I'm sure everybody gets visitation rights with their droid. Again, nothing to be irate about. Okay, I think that's everything. I got a couple more notes here, but it looks to be like things I've already covered. There may be a few things that I've missed. I am on Facebook. You can check me out, Adam Palpatine. My real name is on there too, so that's not really going to hide much. But if you're weird, leave me alone. But I'm on Twitter under at Adam Palpatine. You can find me on Facebook, Adam Palpatine. I'm all over the place. I'm in numerous Star Wars groups, including my Star Wars Life. The Reformed Cantina. I am a Reformed Christian. I'm not going to get into preaching here, but if you are a Reformed Christian, a believer in the doctrines of grace or Calvinism, there is a Christian group called the Reformed Cantina that I am a part of. It's very good. You can check me out all over the place. You can even email me at my old wrestling one. I didn't establish a new Adam Palpatine Gmail, but I have my old wrestling one, wrestlingdoneright.com or wrestlingdoneright@gmail.com. You can reach me there until I establish a new email address for this site for Adam Palpatine, if you will. I recorded this so early that I haven't established everything, guys. I wanted to have better graphics. I wanted to have better decor behind me, but I wanted to get these answers to Doomcock out there, and I'm glad I got to do so. But since we're at the hour mark, 1 hour and 2 minutes, I am going to wrap up. I want to thank you for joining me for this episode. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm not going to put up with a bunch of junk. Oh, one last thing. I can't forget this. My brother's in this camp. My brother Ben. We get along great, but if you think Rey was Mary Sue, some feminist icon, I just feel sorry for you, okay? I do believe that Rian Johnson may have been going for that. Let me create a feminist icon. The Force is female. I've seen the t-shirts of some of the Kathleen Kennedy and her buddies wearing them. Goofy, okay? I'm not getting into politics on this show. Never. Never, okay? But feminists don't need men. Feminists often hate men. Rey needed men in her life. She was in love with Ben, okay? She was extremely fond of Finn, I would say like a brother. Extremely fond of Poe. Okay, she needed a man to raise her from the dead. Okay, she had a master named Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master. She went searching for Luke. Why, if she was such a feminist icon, wouldn't she have rejected that and been like, oh, just Leia's good enough? Please. If he wants, a typical good feminist would have been like, the hell with Luke Skywalker. He ran away. That's what men do. I'll take care of it. That was a perfect way for Rey, if a Mary Sue, which she wasn't, and boy, that annoys me. Because you're insinuating that I'm worshiping some feminist icon, and I love women, but come on. I love strong women. I worked with children for 20 years. Me and my wife worked with disadvantaged teenagers for 20 years. Lived with them 24/7, okay? And I taught all of my girls to grow up and be strong. I didn't tell them you don't need no man or anything ridiculous like that. I told them to be picky with the men in their lives. But the ridiculous notion that she was some feminist icon, maybe feminists like her, but she's not a feminist icon. She went and looked for Luke because she attributed him as being the most important man in the galaxy. Not only that, whenever she was tempted by the dark side, she wanted to run and stand on an island to be just like him. So she mimicked Luke Skywalker. She's not a feminist icon. She's not a Mary Sue. It's just another excuse for you not to embrace the rest of Star Wars because it doesn't bow down to your fan fiction ideas of what a good Star Wars story is about. Okay? So get over the Mary Sue thing. Those of you that can't get over the points I'm making here, I am asking you kindly and nicely to do what I did with professional wrestling and consider just walking away from the Star Wars saga. Walk away. Leave it to those who love it. Leave it to those like myself and countless others, 86% at this point at Rotten Tomatoes, who love this movie. 86%. That means 14% of you that want to whine and cry for two reasons. It's that it ruined The Last Jedi, it turned its back on The Last Jedi. That's part of the audience that hates Rise of Skywalker. And the other part is those who are crying Mary Sue and other things like that. Look, guys, I don't hate you. God bless you. But find some other form of entertainment instead of sticking around the Star Wars fandom and unmercifully attacking it like Sith. Stop it. You don't want to behave that way. But until next time, where the set will look better and everything about the show will be better, my name is Adam Palpatine. May the Force be with you.